Hey, good evening, everyone. We'll wait for some time for people to join, and then we'll start today's session. I'm live after a long time, so let's just give it, say, around a minute, and then we will start our webinar for the day. So people are joining. Let's wait for some time. Right. I guess I will start. People will keep joining because we will stick to the time. Right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to today's, session or webinar on how to steer your career towards leadership roles with a CISSP. Now, why CISSP? We will talk about that, but my main aim would be to, how to steer your career towards leadership roles today in the infosec domain, and how CISSP definitely helps you in steering your career towards certain leadership roles. Right. So why pursue leadership in information security? That's something very important. Why do you want to be into the leadership roles in information security? Now, if you look at the conundrum of information security, it has been there for last 30 odd years, to be frank. I started my IT journey somewhere around 1994. That is where the boost started happening. The software industry came up, the IT industry came up, the security industry started building up. Right now, people who have worked in the IT and information security domain in the last 2 decades are presently in their leadership roles, to be frank. Right. Also, people who are, say, around 10 years of experience are there in leadership roles, or looking at leadership roles. Now, what are the main causes? Firstly, if we see, the threats are diverse threats. With AI coming in, I can write a malware code in no time. I can prompt a chat GPT or any other LLM, and I can actually create a virus or a worm in no time, exactly no time. Right? That's one of the threats. Then second is, if you look at supply chain risk have become a major risk. Okay, with what happened in the CrowdStrike incident, the blue screen of death, probably no CISO would have ever thought that a well-reputed EDR company will cause a global shutdown, right? So companies, could they have that oversight? Do they have that strategic oversight? Right. So that's one of the key leadership qualities which would be expected once you step into mid senior as senior level role. That means you need to have that strategic thought process. Right. So how do you build that strategic thought process? Now, strategic thought process, if you ask me 20 years back, I can say that I can think strategically, but to be frank, I cannot. Today, I can say that I can lead an organization uh, for and look at it how it's going to perform, or what all its problems are going to be in next 3 to 5 years, and I can build a strategy around. So when we say strategy for an organization, you're looking at a highway of 3 to 5 years, right? Now, how does CISSP become a stepping stone for this leadership role? If you look at CISSP, once you get into the rigmarole of preparing for CISSP, I never say that CISSP is a job earning certification or something which will get you a quick remuneration. No, I look at CISSP as a leadership builder role. Why? Once you get into CISSP, first thing that happens, you get understanding of what is governance, how to build a strategy, what is policy, how policy driven security is brought into action. So if you look at CISSP is not exactly teaching you how to secure your IT or information domain. It's not. It's making you aware of the risks that you should be taking into account once you are building a strategy for an organization. And that's why CISSP becomes a very big stepping stone for anyone who is 10 years and above experience and looking at mid manager, senior manager, director level roles. Now, I started researching CISSP way back in 2012, and I give my personal example. I give example of almost more than 100 people in the last 3 years who have qualified CISSP along with me, and I can't say that any one of them has not benefited and looking at a leadership role right now. I'll give you certain use cases and certain, uh, you know, examples as to how we steered certain careers towards very beautiful leadership roles. Now, those who are aware of it, this is a generic slide about what is the CISSP certification. To be frank, CISSP is a pretty old certification. It is almost 3 decade old certification. It was developed by ISC2, and it validates your expertise across 8 domains, which make you aware of all the risks that you can think of in your information domain. Right? Once you look at that, now once you are looking at leadership roles, you say, okay, if I have to consider a factor for my organization, what is it going to be? So those 8 domains give you that expertise to think about proactively managing risks for your organization, right? And that's why this exam is targeted at experienced professionals. Why? We expect that to think strategically, to become a leader, you need to have a little bit of experience. Day one, you cannot become a leader, right? So once you look at this complete experienced professionals, what I have seen, this is my personal experience over the last 3 years of training which I have been doing, that professionals who have worked for almost 10 years pass it better. Why? Because anyone who's less than 10 years, who they do not have a complete exposure on all the domains. People who have more than 10 years of experience generally get an exposure over, say, 3 to 4 domains of CISSP, and they can think that manager like, senior manager like, or director level like, or risk based, assessment of how to navigate your organizations through the today's information security threats. Right. So how does CISSP build those leadership skills, right? Now, one of the key leadership areas which is very beautifully brought in by, I will say, CISSP is the strategic risk management. Now, strategic risk management is where I will say that that is what I learned from CISSP. Now, everything revolves around risk management today in the infosec domain. Now, why so? There are numerous risks. There are n number of risks. How do you manage those risks? So unless you manage those risks in a proactive manner, you will see that you are faltering or you're falling behind. Now, that is one key factor of CISSP which teaches you how to manage your risk strategically. Right. Next is how do you implement this strategy? You implement this strategy by having proper governance in place, and governance in place means that it is directed from the top management, and you should be able to deal with the top manager. You should be able to collaborate with the top management. You should be able to understand the business objectives of the organization, and that's how policy and governance is one aspect which is taught by the domain one of CISSP. Now, if you go through CISSP preparation, you will see that everywhere it is trying to tell you to measure a control or measure an act with risk. Okay, you have to understand the risk, and based on the risk is what you try to measure whether you should implement a control or not, or what could be the response which you expect for a given situation. Right. Then is incident response. Now, incident response has come as a major factor in last 2 decades, and more so in last decade or so, wherein you need to be prepared for any incident, because you cannot avoid incidents. You can lower down the risk, but ultimately you should be prepared to handle a risk, right? Now, so now once you are able to uh, handle the risk, and you are able to understand what the risks are, what will happen is you should be able to develop those incident response plans. Okay, and once you have been able to develop those incident response plan, what will happen is you will take a proactive action in securing your organization. And finally, you will start speaking the language of the top management. Okay, if you would have seen in last 10 minutes or so, I have spoken. I have not spoken any technical terms. I have spoken very, very measured, generic terminologies, which will make it easier for the top management to understand. Now, in my last 22 years in the army and 2 years in the corporate, 2 to 3 years in the corporate, I've realized the top management, whether in the armed forces or in outside, do not understand the technical jargons. They understand metrics. First thing is you present them metrics. You ask them what is the budgeting going to, because everything is a cost, right? So you start understanding the profit and loss statements. You understand what kind of budgeting do you requirement, how can you sequence this, what is your strategic targets, what is your objective. Like once you start doing that, the top management starts aligning with you, you start understanding. Whereas a typical cybersecurity technologist is only worried about his domain, and he wants the best of controls, best of tools to secure, and that may not align with the top line. Okay, so that's how you build the leadership skills. Now, exam is something which I take in my training, and I will explain. I have done many webinars on how to tackle this exam. You can go on my YouTube channel and watch how to pass CISSP in 90 days, right? It's there on my YouTube channel. Uh, so you will, it's everything is there. Don't worry about that. My aim today is to, steer you towards, how to take on those leadership roles. Now, CISSP 8 domains basically makes you aware with all the risks in all the domains which today affect our digital transformation and digital transformation journey for any organization, whether it's a government organization, a federal organization, or it's a private limited company, or it's an NGO, or it's anything, any company, any organization which has to deal with data. And today you cannot survive without data and networks, right? So that's why we have to, the leadership has to build in such a manner who understands the top line and the bottom line, both. You sit in between, right? You are the risk managers, you are not the control owners, remember that. And that's the thin line between cybersecurity and information security. If someday we will talk about what is information security and cybersecurity, we speak about this in a to and fro manner very quite often. So once you look at becoming taking on a leadership role with CISSP, what are the roles which can help you land up? In my understanding, in the last 3 to 4 years, and with now CISSP in one of the most in-demand certifications, I see most of the CISOs aiming for a CISSP certification. That become a non-said industry standard today, right? You can also look at security director roles. In most of the big fours and companies, I see directors are all CISSP certified or are looking at passing CISSP certification. You can become a risk manager, you can become a senior cybersecurity consultant, you can become a senior GRC specialist, right? GRC is very well in demand because very few people understand the complete process of GRC, very few. And that's why we try to bridge that gap by bringing in a hands-on GRC course by Mr. Love Johar, right? So what we do is we understand that the lower level roles are more hands-on. Somebody's doing VAPT, somebody is the control owner, but a larger uh, picture originates once you go at higher level and start dealing with the top management, and that's where CISSP makes you propel into that league. Right. So what happens is, say, around 5 to 15 years, you are technically involved in an organization, right? But once you are there, once you have finished your 5 years of experience, I will take the questions at the end. There are a few questions which are popping up. I will take the questions at the end. Okay. I'll take all the questions at the end. So what happens is, you know, like in any organization, your first few years are technically hands-on, right? You start from scratch, you get your hands dirty, okay, and you remain in that silo of yours. But somewhere down the line, you start feeling that you are getting you know stuck up in the same technical silo, and that's where you want to grow up. So once you want to grow up, CISSB bridges that growing up ladder. Okay, it becomes a ladder to start thinking horizontally, looking at an horizon, looking at bigger things, and not remaining in your own silo of network or AppSec or identity and access management, where you are a specialist. So Sorry for this interruption. So once you start looking at going from those technical roles to the senior management roles, CISSP brings in that bridging exercise, right? So once you look at CISSP, you start thinking from the point of risk. Okay. Earlier, when I was dealing with security, I would always go on control. I said, okay, we cannot open this port on firewall because that's a risk. But I never thought it as a risk. I rather gave a 0 and 1 response. I said, no, we cannot open this particular port without taking a decision that it might affect productivity. So did I measure the risk? Is it so risky? So the decision should be driven by risk and not my technical understanding, right? So, and once you go into risk management, you will see that you will be dealing with finance guys. Okay, you will raise a risk on finance team, and they will say, "Why are you raising a risk on me?" That means non-technical stakeholders now come into picture. You come into picture with finance guys, procurement guys, operations guys. I was recently working for a client in Saudi, and the operations guys comes and says, "Hey, cybersecurity team, why are you raising a risk on me? I'm just a guy who maintains the highways. Okay, I'm responsible for maintaining the optical fiber cable," without understanding that if that fiber gets cut, there is going to be non-availability of the services. So once we raised that risk, we collaborated with him. We told him that, look, this is a risk on availability, and you are responsible for owning this risk. That in case of an accident and the fiber gets broken, your complete operations are going to stop. Right. So can you collaborate with non-technical stakeholders? And that is what CISSP helps you understand. Right. One of the major part of CISSP, I feel, in my last 25 years, how CISSP made difference is to gain experience with governance. Okay, I've been in governance roles, I've been in compliance roles, but once I understood frameworks, different kind of compliance requirements. Today there are so many compliance requirements now. Governments are going very stricter, right? You will find US, Europe, Middle East, very, very strict on compliances. May not be in India, but we see that coming very soon. Okay, we will be seeing that happen pretty soon. Right. So how CISSP helps you in that decision making? You get introduced to frameworks. You understand what is the importance of frameworks in developing that strategic mindset, whether it's ISO, whether it's NIST, whether it's COBIT, whether it's SAPSA, SOX. You start now aligning yourself with frameworks. Okay, if this organization, if a bank is working under in US, what are the frameworks it has to follow? If it's a federal agency in US, what are the frameworks? If it is an Indian agency in banking sector, what are the frameworks? You start talking the language of frameworks. The moment you start talking the language of frameworks, I'm sorry, there's a power cut maybe. The moment you start talking the language of frameworks, what happens is the top management understands that, because all organizations have something called enterprise risk management. Now, enterprise risk management understands this language pretty well. For them, InfoSec GRC is something new and they cannot handle it. And that's what gives you leverage by doing that CISSP to take a hook and become ahead and become part of the enterprise risk management. It always tells you to, align the security process with business objectives. That's one of the major key factors, takeaway factors for taking that CISSP. You start looking at from the business point of view and not from control point of view. Right, and then you start creating that security first culture, that okay, how security can be embedded right from the start rather than patching it up in the end. So you start proactively maturing your organization's requirements. Okay, right. So once you started preparing for CISSP, it's always, I always say, you understand concepts. You do not memorize anything. There's no point in memorizing anything if you're preparing for CISSP, right? You have to understand the real world application, and that's where your experience comes in point. Now, one of one of the key factors when I've seen in my training sessions is people correlate more when I give them practical examples in my lifetime, right? In the military lifetime, or in my last 2-3 years in the corporate world. When I give them examples, that becomes much more easier to understand. So always try to relate everything with the real world applications, right? Always whenever you're preparing for CISSP exam, I must say that you should have a group, and that group should have the capability to generate discussions over governance, over risk-based, over compliance-based decisions. Okay, you should be able to communicate with people using these three terminologies: governance, risk management. Decisions should be based on risks, and compliance is something which is mandatory. Right. So let me tell you a few success stories. You can search those profiles on the LinkedIn, okay, and you can see for yourself. So I'll give the first success story of my CISSP. There's a there's an individual who gave me a first review. Okay, I'm forgetting his name. So this guy comes to me and says, "Sir, I've been because of COVID, I have been out of work, and I need to pass this exam." I said, "Fine." And that is the time I had just started my CISF sessions almost 2.5 years back. So this guy does training with me, clears the CISSP exam and lands up a very good role in PwC as an associate director. His complete experience was in IT, but the moment he did CISSP, he started talking the language of risk. Okay. Now, once he started talking the language of risk, he rose the ladder in the PwC, and today he is a director. The second guy I would like to say is one of the recent examples is Mr. Pramod Bisht. Now, Pramod was working for one of the big four companies, and decided to jump into CISSP. Not very experienced, 7 to 8 years, but this guy puts in his hard work. Okay, and clears the exam in one go and lands up a pretty good role with one of the leading airline companies. Not because of salary, of course, there was a huge salary jump, but what he was able to maneuver was from his technical role. He went into a GRC role where he said, "Sir, my technical mindset helped me in building a strategy for this organization." Right. Of course, there have been numerous. You can go on my LinkedIn profile and see there have been numerous success stories. A recent success story is of Vikas Gautam, who landed up a pretty good role in Tech Mahindra in a European client-facing role. Again, the language of seniority, the language of leadership is what got him that role. Right. So what's next? Then you've done CISSP, you've landed up a leadership role. What's that? Shall you stop? No, no, no. The world is changing. The world is changing at such a fast pace that you need to constantly keep scaling up. You have to get more certifications. You have to go for various seminars. You have to be upfront with the technology, the risk, and the frameworks which are continuously developing. So I always recommend to network the maximum. Okay, I have gained almost 13,000 followers in last 2 years by just having taken webinars. So imagine the strength of my network. Okay, so many people get benefited from networking. We help people land up certain jobs. We help people land up, good roles. Refer people out, right? So that helps. Right. So my practical advice: networking is one of the best way of dealing with taking on leadership roles. So build a network of mentors, get as many mentors as possible. Attend a lot of cybersecurity and leadership forums. There are a lot which are happening right now. Okay, you should attend at least in your cities, right? And be extremely good in your communication and presentation skills. And today the world gives you ample opportunity, no matter whether people look at you or not. Go live on LinkedIn, take a session, whatever your skill set is, just say it out, just speak it out. You will improve your presentation skills, because if you want to communicate with the leadership, you need to have good presentation and communication skills. You should be able to speak without looking at slides. You should be able to speak your mind clearly. You should be able to gather your thoughts correctly and speak your mind. Right. So now I'll be back with a Q&A session. Let's take a short 2 minutes break. There's some power issue at my home. I'll need to sort that out. So you can type out your questions. I'll come and take it. Just give me a 2 minute break. Thank you. Right, I'm back and I'll take on questions now. Okay, let's take on the first question. What is the certification and training cost of CISSP? Devashish, that is something which we don't discuss on webinars. You can get in touch with our team, and the certification and certification cost is close to around, you will spend somewhere around exam fees around 750 dollars, plus $150 of registration and all. Overall, it's $1,000 affair for passing this exam. Overall, roughly. Okay, so it's $1,000 affair for passing this exam. Should we pass ISC to CC or so? Andre asked this question. Andre, you say that should we pass ISC to CC or we can jump directly to CISSP? And that depends completely upon your experiences. If you have adequate experience in the infosec domain, CC is not required. CC is aimed at beginner level, and it doesn't have any experience requirements. So certified in cybersecurity, it's a good certification. I've gone through the content. It is almost, I'll say, 20% CISSP, and it's a free exam to give. You just have to pay $50 to get the certification. Good to have, not a problem. But if you're an experienced professional, somewhere above 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, and you worked in the information domain or the IT domains, you can directly jump in for CISSP, right? I don't see why you should be appearing for CC. But yes, if you want to get into the rigmarole of studying, because CISSP requires a little bit of very high effort, right? So CC is targeted at getting you initiated. CISSP is more focused towards taking that manager, senior manager level role. I hope I've answered your question, right? Right. Then I have a question from Harshad. Harshad asks, I'm from physical security background with 13 years experience. Where should I start to achieve CISSP? Harshad, if you want to migrate from physical security domain to information security domain, you will have to start a little low. CISSP may not be the right certification for you immediately. What can help you is probably a more basic certification like probably CC. You can start with CC and look at CompTIA Security Plus as one of the certifications which can give you that core understanding. It's not an easy certification, even CompTIA Security Plus, but it's aimed at someone who wants to start off his career, his or her career towards cybersecurity and information security roles, right? So that is what I would like to say. Okay. Anyone? Any else? Anybody? Any other question? Please feel free to ask, because that's one of the major part of getting into leadership roles. You need to communicate, and that's a very major part. You can be right, you can be wrong. Does not matter, right? Uh, you have 15 years of experience, you've done CC. I don't see why you cannot. Okay, there is nothing called cannot. Okay, you can definitely go in and I think it's Ashish, right? So Ashish, you can definitely go in for CISSP. There's no one who can stop. I know people personally who have no technical background and have cleared CISSP exam. You just have to change your mindset. You have to think broadly. Maybe you'll have to deep dive slightly further into the technical domains, such as domain 3, which is security architecture and engineering, and domain 4, which is communication and network security. But there is no question why you cannot do it. If you do a little dig down, you will be able to make it. Yes, you will probably have to go a slightly more higher effort, because we have people who have passed this certification with non-tech background. How is CISSP different from CISSP? Devashish, how CISSP is different is, I've gone through CISM also, I've gone through CISA also. I didn't want to give that exam. It's not that I'll say those are bad certifications or something like that. CISM and CISA certifications, I will say, are more focused. CISM towards managing information security, CISA towards auditing information security. CISSP is a leadership role exam. It is trying to make you understand of all the risks, okay, so that you understand technical risks and you understand management issues. So it's a bridge between technology risks and management. How to deal with management. That's why I didn't say how to maneuver your information security leadership career with a CISM, because CISM is very clear: Certified Information Security Manager. You're managing people to contain the risk, whereas information security professional is trying to maneuver you towards the slightly more leadership levels of understanding the organization perspective and applying it. Not in cybersecurity, because you have a question. Is CISSP the topmost certification in cybersecurity landscape at the moment? Yes, people do take it, but you know what? Uh, Cybersecurity is just not cybersecurity. Information leakages can happen from multiple places. Okay, if I leak certain privacy data of you, will you call it cybersecurity issue? So yes, they people confuse information and cybersecurity cohesively. The problem is, yes, it is. I will say yes, it is, but it's actually not a cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is more technical controls. Okay, how you protect your networks, how you protect your endpoints, how are you responding to events and incidents. Okay, but CISSP is how to manage a organizational risk from various information security threats. That's the main aim of CISSP, right? Because I hope I've been able to make you understand this. Prabhat, your question is: I want to understand the framework on which policies are made for information security worldwide. So, Prabhat, the starting framework which was there, okay, it was 7001. So, 7001 was ISO's leading framework, which became 27001, right? So, if you look at ISO's framework, it is one of the earliest frameworks. On top of ISO's framework, NIST came out with one of the first frameworks, right? NIST SP 853. So once NIST SP 853 came in, right, then came in NIST CSF. So if you look at world over, ISO 27001 becomes the base for any frameworks, and from there policies are derived for respective, systems. I hope I've been able to answer your question, Prabhat. See, cybersecurity. Since you are in cyber, because I will tell you very simple. If I'm a VAPT professional, for me, OSCP, CRTP, OSC, those are the certifications which I am looking into, right? But the problem is, the moment I would like to now become the CISO, I will only look at my technical expertise. I'm not going to look at others. So that is the bridging challenge. Okay, or I have been a SOC analyst level 1, level 2, level 3, then I've been a SOC manager, then I've been a director of SOC operations only. Then if I'm looking at maneuvering from that role into a CISO role, how do I bridge that gap? That is where CISSP helps. I hope I've been able to answer that question for you guys. So the problem is, challenge is, somebody wants to come in and do CISSP and thinks that I'm going to be a VAPT professional or I'm going to be a SOC professional. No, you are coming from that background and now you are trying to assimilate all that knowledge and bring out your leadership values or leadership roles. Right? Any more questions? It depends, Aditya. So Aditya asks, how long do I need to study to prepare and pass CISSP? Also, should I prepare for CCSP first, then CISSP? Uh, Aditya, simply said, from my perspective, if you are in the infosec, better to get CISSP first, right? Both CISSP and CCSP are totally different approaches. CISSP it's a very difficult exam in a sense that it's a adaptive exam. Okay, the moment you start answering the questions, it adapts to your knowledge level. It adapts to your weaknesses. The moment it catches on to your weaknesses, it understands that you're underprepared somewhere. Whereas CCSP is a linear exam. It doesn't match whether you have done a wrong question or a right question. It straight away throws you 150 questions. There is no correlation. But CISSP is an adaptive exam. And once it's an adaptive exam, that's why it's so revered, so valued, no dumps available, right? So I always say, if you are in InfoSec, if you are in cybersecurity, you please get your CISSP first, and then maneuver to CCSP. CCSP is cloud specific, so then go to CCSP. That's always my recommendation if you are a well experienced professional. I hope I've answered your question, Aditya. Right. So what I do is I take only one batch in a month, and we cap the strength at 15 because that's what makes interaction more easier, right? So we have a batch coming up compared to CISO, for example, from CH. Is there a big difference? Andre, I didn't get your question. What you're trying to ask me is compared to CISO, for example, from CH, is there a big difference? I didn't get that question. CH is a very basic level certification. CH tells you the basic threats and requirements. Having a CH is good if you are preparing for CISSP. Okay, if you are a CH, then there are a lot of terms which will come naturally to you. You do not have to start scratching. If I tell you what's a virus, what's a worm, what's a Trojan, it would be very easy for you, right? What is the scope of information security field as evolving Gen AI or any software is created to audit the ISMS? Yeah, so this good question, Prabhat. So Prabhat asks, just curious, what is the scope of the information security field as evolving Gen AI or any software is created to audit the ISMS? Right, Prabhat. See, you have to look at the maturity levels of each and every organization. Today, I've been to companies, organizations who are operating without even a firewall, even a basic firewall. Okay, mid-sized organizations working without a basic firewall. Okay, uh, going into data leaks who don't understand privacy. Do you think they are going to straight away adopt Gen AI to stop their attacks? So there's a huge gap between our knowledge level and people who are operating on ground and doing business. Okay, I'm still yet to see very matured organization, big fours, who have adopted AI very seamlessly. Okay, so let's not. Yes, if you understand Gen AI, it can actually help you in integrating generative AI into your process, because ultimately, any attack which is going to happen is going to be some form of a script. Okay, if you're looking at only cyber risk, but how do you manage human risk? I have I'll tell you one a use case, right? So I go to this organization secretly tells me that, look boss, we have got a major breach happening. I said, what was there, a major attack? No, 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 there was no attack. The manager, once he was leaving the company, he took the hard disk out of his laptop and took the hard disk away. You tell me what Gen AI will be able to stop that, right, Prabhat? Do I answer your question? With generative AI, will stop you from uh, self-study. Self-study is definitely, you have a lot of materials. You can take Cybex 10th edition as one of the first solutions. Please go through my notes. I have made some wonderful notes, 610 pages, completely free. That's going to be, I'll say, in the times to come, I feel it's going to be a Bible for anyone who's trying to pass the ISSP, at least for next 3 years, because you do not have to prepare your notes. If you follow me on LinkedIn, please look at my Cornell notes. There are domain 1 to 8. Please use Cybex 10th edition. Please use destination certification. Uh, I think these are the resources which are more than enough, right? If you want free resources, go to YouTube, follow me on YouTube. I've got a complete course running on my YouTube channel, right? Just search Protect Academy. I've got a free course running there. Uh, so there are a lot of material, right? Vivek, how is CISO exam from EC Council different? Uh, CISO is more executive level training. It does not delve too much into technical risks. Okay, CISO deals with, I will say, governance only, more of governance, more of top management levels. It does not delve too much into the technical requirements. And now, if you ask me, CISSP, because of its difficulty, because of its preparation requirement, stands much higher once you have it on your CV. That's something which I will not deny, right? So once I take an interview, and if you are CISSP standing in front of me, I will say, okay, this guy has gone through that complete, you know, preparation structure, and he has put in that effort of 3 to 6 months to pass this exam, right? Study material, told, you know, I've told this study materials also. Any other questions? But if you want to clear this exam within 90 days to 120 days, I do recommend to get a mentor. Anyone, you know, it could be an online mentor, somebody who's already passed the ISSP, whatever. Okay, but getting a mentor is good for this exam, because then you will stay on track. Because any stoppages which come in this preparation for this exam, what happens is then it's out of sight, out of mind. So the aim should be to book the exam within 90 to 100 days, put that stretch on, okay, complete this within 90 days. Do not prolong it beyond 100 days, then it becomes a long drawn affair. Okay, Ghazal, if you can just help out, you know, and put all the domains of our CISSP Cornell notes to help them, right? It's got everything you need to pass this exam, right? Other than the questions, of course. Okay, you cannot do every single certification from ISACA, ISC2, and pay membership fee. Also, we cannot be master in everything like firewall, GDPR, PCM network. How can one be relevant in this industry, as we keep seeing so many courses, certification? At bare minimum, what should one person do as training certificate? So, Bijoy, what I feel, right? What I feel, whatever you're talking, right? So many, right? Uh, you have to define your stage. So there are two things which I always say. CISSP is just the base formation. Okay. You do not have to do CISSP, CISM, CISA. No, never. If you have CISM, good enough. But at least you have to build a framework, right? So if you are looking at CISSPs versus CISM versus CISA, I'm not saying uh, one is good, one is bad. What I'm saying is CISSP becomes your base, and then you carve out where do you want to lead your career into. Do you want to get into audit? Do you want to get into leadership roles? Okay, so make CISSP as your base format. That's what I'm saying, because of course we all understand that CISSP is globally recognized. So I take the CISSP, I go to Middle East, people say, okay, fine, please come. They don't ask me questions. I go to Australia, people say, hey, please, you CISSP, okay, great. No interview required. I've had this situation. I do multiple consulting roles. I've seen situations where I just put a CISSP and that's done. People don't ask me any questions. Right. So there are so many things you have to build your basic understanding, and that comes with experience, Vijay. It will not come on day one. Slowly, it comes slowly. It builds over a period of time, right? I did my CCNA in 2003, right? So everything builds slowly. It does not happen in one day. And there's no harm in paying membership fees. If you're earning well, it's a good ROI, right? I bought a small this laptop MacBook way back in 2020 along with an iPad. The ROI has been tremendous. I built my complete company using a laptop and a iPad. If I would have thought that day that it's so expensive, why am I buying that? Probably I wouldn't have reached where I am there today. So at times you never think about cost, you think about the ROI which is going to provide it. Right. Thank you so much, guys. I've taken on the questions. If you have any more questions, do let me know. And I hope you have benefited from my perspective. The aim is, of course, it might be a marketing effort from my side, but honestly, get the CISSP whatever way you want. There are so many resources. You do not have to take a training. But we would love if you train with me. No, not a problem. And but get that CISSP. It will help you. Uh, that is my genuine, I'll say, advice, and probably one good mentor level recommendation which I can give. Right. Thank you so much, and thank you for attending my session. I hope I've not bored, and get your CISSP. Take care. Bye bye, and see you next time.